we came from a system called a caste system in India. And one of the reasons my parents came here because was the United States had a rule of law and we had one person, one vote, which has been a long journey of human suffrage. What you see that has happened in America over the last 30, 40 years with the development of these electronic voting systems, there's a feature, a documented feature in these systems, not something that's not unknown, that's called a weighted race feature. That's what it's called. You can look at the 2002 Diebold manual. It's called a weighted race feature. What that means is how many ever votes were, coming in, people who actually voted, the number of people, let's say that's X, and the number of votes that were cast should be equal, right? Well, it turns out that's not true because these systems can multiply people's votes by a factor, a weight. So just like at one point, Dred Scott and the 3/5 compromise, a slave was considered 3/5 of a vote. What we found in Massachusetts was I was 2/3. My voters were reduced to 2/3. In the case, what we're finding in Michigan is President Trump's votes were reduced to 7/10 of a vote. And the fact that the electronic voting systems have this feature, and more importantly, the fact that the state election directors and the secretaries of state have certified, allowed these systems is quite criminal. And what I found interesting is that the at the federal level, the Department of Justice should have intervened because when these weighted race features are there, the way that you can detect it is with what's called the ballot images. And guess what? Many of these states are deleting the ballot images, particularly for federal elections, which is a violation of 52 USC 20701. And I find it quite incredible that Attorney General Barr has not intervened and started putting certain people in jail because they are violating one of the fundamental premises of election law, which is 20701, which says that all data, all records generated in connection with a federal election must be preserved for 22 months. In Massachusetts, what we found in many of these other states, these state election directors are turning off a feature which is in those systems to save all ballot images. Those ballot images are the evidence that can show that the weighted race feature was turned on and used. What we are doing is we're finding the data. We have to use a lot of mathematical techniques, and we're seeing these anomalies, like in Arizona, that President Trump's votes were taken away at 7/10. For me here in Massachusetts, 2/3. In Georgia, we found out in the affidavit I filed for Sidney Powell and Linwood in that case that it was 1.22, that the votes were increased for the opponent. But the fact that the weighted race feature exists in modern electronic voting systems demands that the courts, and that's what we're asking for the federal court in Massachusetts, and I think the Supreme Court should step in and say, wait a minute, this is a land of one person, one vote. And if we don't address that in modern times, we don't have democracy anymore in the United States.